Good morning.
Yes, but we can.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
All right. Looks like folks are a little slow and trickling this morning. We'll give it another minute or two. Okay, all right. Well, we have hit quorum, so I would love to go ahead and get us started. Good morning and welcome to everybody to our February meeting of the Performance Management Subcommittee. Hope each of you are doing well and weathering Omicron okay. We've got a pretty full agenda this morning, and before we jump in, I'm just gonna do one announcement. I have to step off at 11 for another meeting, and so I have asked Dr. Birch to finish chairing the meeting on my behalf, should we need to go all the way to 11:30 this morning. So that being said, let's go ahead and jump in and get started. First agenda item, as always, is a review of our previous subcommittee meetings minutes. Are there any changes, concerns, additions that need to be provided to the minutes? Do we need a minute or two just to do an extra check?
A motion to approve.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor from Danielle to approve last month's minutes. Do we have a second? Okay, we have a second from Brady. Any further discussion? All right, let's vote in the chat box. So you can vote yes, no, or abstain. All right, okay, minutes are adopted. Moving right along. So the next item on our agenda are review and discussion on the project performance standards. So we've had a month to think about these, provide any additional feedback. We'd like to have one more opportunity here for folks to raise any concerns, suggestions, questions they might have. So first, I want to ask if Lloyd, if there's anything else you would like to say about the benchmarks at this point, and then I'm going to open it up to any further questions and discussion.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Jonathan. After the January meeting, we invited members of the committee to provide additional input and suggestions. By the end of January, we had some dialogue with one member of the committee who had concerns about some of the street outreach targets, benchmarks being too high. And we referenced that the proposed benchmarks for the suggested outcomes are consistent with the results of an annual performance report that we did for all of Durham street outreach projects for calendar year 2021. So that's what the data that we use to suggest the proposed targets. But certainly committee members are welcome to suggest increasing or decreasing any of the proposed targets or suggesting other outcomes to measure entirely as well. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Lloyd. Floor is open for comments, questions, suggestions, critique.
And Lloyd, is the information on exits on health insurance, that's coming from prior reports?
Yes, that is based on prior reports.
Yeah, I guess it's, I don't know. I don't really have any other information to suggest it's otherwise. For rapid rehousing, it seems a little high, but I don't have any, you have more information than I do, but because I assume that a lot of people in permanent supportive housing are probably coming in with Medicaid.
Most of the people do get Medicaid, and the target is, I think, an encouragement for all projects to really help people obtain medical insurance.
Yeah, I think it's just hard without Medicaid expansion. But agree, all about health insurance, but until the state decides otherwise, there's some people that are left out. I may ask one other question.
Please.
Sorry, I'm just getting up to speed. Trey, what counts as the transitional housing?
Durham has 2 transitional housing projects. They are both for veterans. They're funded by the VA. Volunteers of America operates Maple Court, which is transitional housing for 24 veterans, and TROSA within its therapeutic community has 20 contracted beds also for veterans who are entered into TROSA's their community for substance use disorders.
I also think that, I think the length of stay for emergency shelter is ambitious for non-congregate rooms.
So are you talking about for singles or
Yeah,
the
for
family?
singles? Yeah. Is that, what was the length of stay for 2021?
I would actually argue that it's more appropriate for singles and much too aggressive for families, because there's a lot less units available for more than one bedroom in an area that people can afford or have vouchers for. There's just less and less landlords that are offering multi-bedroom units with a voucher. So I would say it's maybe more realistic for singles. Definitely, it's better than the original 90 days or less, but it's still very, very difficult.
Wait, isn't it still at 90 days for families? Oh, I see. You're proposing the move to 75. Gotcha.
Yeah, it went from 75 to 90. But even 90 is, that's like rarely going to happen.
It's not, yeah, that's 60 days for singles. I can't imagine that's happening. Have y'all run that one? Let me look at the report from Colin.
So I presume that, all of this, the recommendations, Lloyd, that have been made, were based on obviously looking at HUD. We've got to meet HUD's minimum standards, but in general, it sounds, my understanding is that your team looked at how we are performing on these and then came up with these suggestions, correct?
We are trying to balance HUD's goal, HUD's goal is that experiences of homelessness should be rare, brief, and non-recurring. I think what is a brief stay in emergency shelter? What's a brief experience of homelessness? It certainly could be true that within their current environments, even a 90-day stay or a 90-day experience of homelessness, if it's one time, would be relatively brief. But these could be considered ambitious targets. But I think they also serve as reminders to our shelter projects that they should continue to try to really expedite as much as they can people's exits from their projects. We certainly understand and appreciate the challenges, but it doesn't. But I think keeping them at these kind of levels really encourage projects to have a strong focus on helping people exit to permanent housing as quickly as they can.
Lloyd, this
It
is
is-
Tracy. Your point is well taken. I'm just wondering, is the time frame something that is codified through HUD, or is this something that the city of Durham has determined over the years based on trends?
Well, again, HUD's I think has put into some of their documents that the goal is 30 days or less of homelessness. And what the continuum of care does in terms of evaluating projects, in terms of consequences for potentially not meeting specific targets, remains to be seen. I think there's generally been an understanding of the challenges of meeting specific targets, and whether you're talking about continuum of care funding or emergency solutions grant funding, I'm not aware of any situations where particular projects have experienced reduced funding or been denied funding for failing to meet any specific targets that are adopted by the COC or adopted even by the city of Durham. That may change in the future as we, look to create a more comprehensive and cohesive homeless housing system. But I don't think any projects or organizations would suggest that the funding has been reduced or denied because they did not meet specific targets.
Okay.
Does that
thank
answer
you
your
for
question?
Yes, thank you for clarifying that, because again, I think when we were talking about timeframes for people transitioning out of shelters, I think there are lots of different factors to take into consideration. I was just wondering whether or not that timeframe was determined by the local COC, or if that was something in which, we were trying to meet HUD standards. So thank you for clarifying.
And what actually, I have a question. I know that we have not updated these standards as a COC since 2014. Does HUD provide any guidance based on, any suggestions how often they should be updated? The reason I ask is yes, I know this is a lot of work, but we can of course revisit these, as needed. But go ahead, Lloyd.
There's not been any guidance from HUD as to how often particular COC standards should be updated or revisited. I think HUD, the U.S. Interagency Coordinating Council on Homelessness has been revising the federal strategic plan on addressing homelessness. I would say probably every 2 years or so. But how that impacts HUD and how it impacts us, I think is up to the local level.
I have one more comment about the street outreach part. I'm just sitting here thinking, and I'm just wondering, I think the fear of the 40% is just the job stability among the participants. Like on the ground, that's kind of the common complaint that they get a job, lose a job, get a job, lose a job. Their job stability is the problem. And HMIS will capture it at 3 points: entry, interim, and exit. But that doesn't necessarily mean that in between those points, these clients always have a job. And I think that's kind of the fear of the 40%, but I do think it's great that they're meeting it currently. So that's just a thought.
I appreciate the thought, Shantae, and I think particularly with street outreach, since we've not had any outcomes to measure previously and no specific benchmarks, it's kind of trial and error to see how our projects perhaps meet or exceed or fall short of those specific targets. And then in a couple of years, perhaps we can look at revisiting them and adapting them, as well as considering other particular outcomes that the committee and the community may wish to add to these. Tried to look at what are the important benchmarks, or what are the important outcomes for street outreach projects, and incorporate them into these outcomes, and then suggest targets for them based on existing performance.
We've got a couple comments in the chat box that I just want to read. Colin has reminded us that the HEART Act sets a goal of ensuring that no family is homeless for more than 30 days. And then Andrea has also provided a slight clarification here. HMIS COC APRs or ESG capers capture income at entry, interim annual assessment, not regular updates, and exit. And then of course, Shantae's responded here saying the annual is what she was referring to. So hopefully that clarified things. Okay, Andrea, we got the thumbs up. Okay. All right, any other questions or comments? So we've got some options here today. So if the committee feels ready to move forward with a vote to adopt these changes, we can certainly do that. If somebody if the committee wants to make additional amendments and adopt the benchmarks, we can certainly do that. If the committee does not feel it's ready to vote on this, then we can also postpone. So, what are folks thinking at this time? Are we comfortable enough to look at moving forward with a vote? Do we need more time?
I mean, I guess I'm, again, I'm new, so I don't really know. I get that I feel like that, we're all representing different programs and all feel that perhaps some of the goals are too ambitious to be attainable. I do get the point of having ambitious goals as something to work towards. So I guess I feel okay moving forward with the vote, but do want to note that it's not that attaining those goals, is not really up to the individual providers. It's a system that achieves those goals, not the individual providers. So just want that to be recognized.
And I do remember very clearly when I worked in rapid rehousing, realizing and thinking how little control I really had over the outcome. So I hear you on that, and realize that, it is the organization, can only do so much, but the individuals we serve and care for, do have to do their part too. And sometimes things don't always work out even when you do everything right. So.
Yeah, but yeah. But also that never mind. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. That's okay.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I think you sometimes have, you have sort of emergency shelter, street outreach, and rapid rehousing, and each one is sort of set up to have sort of a fair process, which sometimes means that you've got things that take longer because it's not sort of working in concert. But if that makes sense at all.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like to me, you're talking about how there are multiple things at work, right? When you're trying to help somebody get out of homelessness, and they don't all happen at the same time or right away. Am I catching your comment right or summing it up right?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. So what's the plan here? Or either way, I think a motion has to be made, whether to move forward with, to adopt, or a motion to postpone. Either way, as the chair, I'd love to see a motion on this, however the group, feels here.
I'm not a voting member, but I will just say that the 90 days is much better than 75. So it's a move in the right direction. And even though it's a benchmark, I think that, we do a well enough job as a COC explaining the different barriers that families and individuals are experiencing, and that we may not always meet those measures, but we do have to have a benchmark. So I'm just glad that it's gone in the right direction. So if I was a voting member, I would be okay with it, but I'm not.
Am I a voting member or non-voting member?
You are a voting member, Sally. So there's 12 members on this committee, and Shayna was our liaison for families moving forward. It is a public meeting, so folks are welcome to join. As Shayna's liaisonship ended with the start of the new HSAC year, Brady is now the new liaison, so for families moving forward. But as I said, anybody is welcome to attend because it is a public meeting.
I guess I'll make a motion to adopt.
Okay. So Sally has made a motion to adopt the proposed benchmarks as presented. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Literally, I heard both voices at the same time. So I'm gonna say Danielle was seconded that, followed by a third from Angel. Any further discussion? All right, let's move to a vote in the chat. Okay. Motion carries. And a reminder, however, things turn out as we continue to use these benchmarks, we can always revisit them. And so, I think the strengths of our committee is that we have a lot of representation from COC projects on here. So, you all can take a look, you can run your own data against these benchmarks and see how, you're doing. And if, you can always bring up to the committee, hey, I think we need to, to revisit this. So this is not, it doesn't have to be set in stone forever. All right, thank you to everybody there. Next up on our agenda is a presentation from Hanalea, our quarterly system and entry point performance report. Hanalea, are you on with us? Okay, it doesn't look like Hanalea is on yet, so we'll give her a few more minutes. Looks like we're moving along pretty well here. So let's move to the next item here, which is an update on our COC funded project evaluation and scoring process. You know, some of you on here are on that committee. I'm on there as well. So Lloyd's just going to give a short update to the rest of the committee on where we're at.
Thank you, Jonathan. I oriented the evaluation scoring committee yesterday in a brief meeting. They are in the process of evaluating projects, policies, and procedures for how well they include Housing First implementation standards into their policies and procedures. They're also in the process of evaluating projects intake and assessment tools for being low barrier projects. Colin and I are working to evaluate the performance of the COC permanent housing projects based on the scoring tool that this committee adopted in January. We're in the process of doing that and expect to finalize those scores in a couple of weeks. The committee yesterday did schedule a couple of meetings if needed to finalize the scores on component 5 regarding Housing First implementation. And we expect the committee to be able to provide at least an initial report to this committee of the results of the evaluation at its March 10th meeting. And then we anticipate that the committee would make recommendations for recognizing outstanding performance or recommendations for perhaps performance improvement plans for projects that aren't meeting the committee's expectations and standards at its April meeting in preparation for the 2022 Continuum of Care funding competition later this summer and into the fall.
And just to remind everybody who is on that scoring committee, so it is Danielle, Alicia, Shay, and myself. So we're delighted to do this on behalf of the committee. Does anybody have any questions at this time about the scoring committee, our progress so far? Well, we do look forward to finishing up over the next couple weeks, month or so, and we'll come back with some recommendations to y'all. Is Hanalea on yet? Okay, not yet. Well, that is what I have is Hanalea's presentation is the next and last thing I have on our agenda, unless anyone else has anything else that they would like to raise at this time. Otherwise, we're just waiting for Hanalea to come online here.
Should I text her? Or has somebody done that already?
Good question.
Hey, this is Colin, sorry. I did text her, I just haven't heard anything back.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you want to wait a few minutes, fine. If not, I guess, I don't know what happened. So we can, if there's nothing else on the agenda, if you want to wait 5 minutes, talk amongst ourselves, or go ahead and adjourn and figure it out.
Well, I have a question. I don't want to
Yeah, I
spoil
had a question too.
Brady's news, but Brady is moving to another position, different organization. And so he will no longer be our liaison for FMF. And I was curious if there was anybody, if there was enough, COC, homeless service providers attending that somebody else could take his place, or do we need to find a replacement? I know it can't be me because I have to spend time off of the committee. Could we replace him within the organization, or should it be a different organization that hasn't had a chance to serve on this committee?
Well, first off, congratulations, Brady. We were happy to have you with us, but of course, are excited for you for a new opportunity. If you wanted to say a few words, you're certainly welcome to.
Oh, I mean, I don't have anything big to say. It's just with the timing. I was only on this committee for a short time, but yeah, I'm going to North Carolina Central to work there in the Department of Institutional Advancement. So it'll be pretty fun.
Okay.
Pretty excited.
Excellent. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
In terms of a possible replacement, we probably need to just check with Hanalea, as well as check the governance charter to see if there's any guidance about, fulfilling a remaining term here that's been vacated. So in short, we'll get back to you.
Great.
All right. And Tracy, you had a question.
Yeah, I had a question. I didn't know if Colin or Lloyd could address this, or if they knew any more information. I know, given that I think it was last week, the rental assistance program ended for the city's initiative to assist individuals who may have been facing an eviction or possibly being late in their rent. Do you know the status in terms of the applicants, that are still in need, or how that process is going in terms of addressing those who are still struggling to maintain their housing during this pandemic?
I don't have a whole lot of details on that because it's not in not in the homeless system. It's over in neighborhood stabilization. My understanding is the application portal closed February 6th, and legal aid will be going through all the applications that were received at that point, and we'll be going through and prioritizing, doing what they do to help as many people as possible from that. At that point, once they get through that, they're anticipating all the funds that are available for that program will be completely exhausted. So if there's people who happen after that, I'm not sure that there is anything in the pipeline as of right now to continue that. It's a good question, and these funds were kind of the one-time Treasury dollars, and to my knowledge, Treasury has not increased or put more money into that pot. But we can get back to you if there is I guess technically phase 3 of this.
Okay, thank you. I realize this is not under your purview, but I was just wondering whether or not you had any insider information to share with us.
No,
Thank you.
just about the same information you all have.
Okay, thank you.
You got it.
Anything else that anyone would like to bring up? Okay.
Jonathan, since we have a moment, I'll share briefly that the point in time count process is continuing. I was pleased that we had over 100 surveys completed with unsheltered people using the mobile application that we're using this year, the Counting Us app that we had used in 2020. We used it again this year. So I'm in the process of analyzing the surveys to look at particularly not only who was actually unsheltered and surveyed on January 26th and the following days, but also looking at the youth who were surveyed to determine what percentage of youth who were surveyed identified themselves as housing unstable, and potentially some of them surveyed probably were in stable housing as well. We did have good partnership with Evity Ross at the Durham Public Schools, McKinney-Vento homeless liaison there, and had perhaps 10 to 12 young people enrolled in the schools identify as housing unstable or actually homeless as well. I was pleased with that, but more information will be forthcoming as that analysis gets completed, and we're still in the process of pulling together particularly the overall point in time count numbers for both sheltered and unsheltered people for January 26th. And expect to have that completed by the end of April. The end of April is our reporting deadline for HUD. And if we have a minute, Andrea, could we ask you to give an update on where we are with our longitudinal system analysis and system performance measure reporting to HUD as well? I think they're also coming up due here in the next few weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're getting really close on the longitudinal system analysis, the LSA report, which is an important kind of annual report that we submit to HUD and is sent directly to Congress as well. So that is due, I believe it's Friday. Nope, today is Thursday. So it's due, I think, Monday the 14th in just a couple days. And we're just finishing up, I think, the last flags. So what the LSA does with HUD is you submit it, and then HUD liaisons compare basically every project, every entry to the HIC in terms of utilization, project alignment, that sort of data. And then there's an opportunity to explain any differences. And then there's also just the flags of running a very complicated report that yields different things, different potential issues or concerns from HUD. So those are just, I know Nicole on our team has been working with Lloyd on getting those flags addressed and submitted. We were really hopeful it was going to be accepted last week, but I think there were a couple more flags. So those should be wrapped up really soon. And then at the end of February is the deadline for the system performance measures. These are the 6 measures that kind of preceded the LSA. There's some overlap between the LSA and system performance measures. So we like to tackle the one with the deadline that's first. It's very comprehensive, and then that data will be, squeaky clean for the submission of system performance measures. Our HMIS participating projects reviewed this data and went through a rigorous data correction process after the federal fiscal year ended in October and November. So our HMIS projects haven't heard about the LSA and system performance measures in a while because we wanted to get your part done as early as possible. Lloyd, do you have anything else to add on system performance measures or LSA?
Good, that's helpful, thank you.
Yeah, I can give a little update too on the HMI side of the HIC and PIT. So we count, shelter, transitional housing, property housing, permanent supportive housing, HMIS participating projects, and that is well underway. The deadline for review and data corrections was Friday, February 4th. And we did get a lot of really good feedback there and engagement from the community. We are, there's a couple like personnel changes that are, I think, disrupting a couple folks, but gosh, think we're at like 80% done in terms of the HMIS projects. So we're doing really well, and I'd just like to share the appreciation of the data center team in particular for everyone's responsiveness in the community. And we're gonna wrap up HIC on the HMIS side at least well before we usually do in March, which will give us time to do other exciting things. So yeah, any questions about that?
All right, thank you for
So
those.
kind of a-
Yeah.
Yes.
So it appears that Hanalea is no longer available. So unless there's anything else that anyone would like to bring up, we can certainly entertain a motion to adjourn for the day.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, Sally has made a motion to adjourn and a second from Brady. All right. Thank you all for being here again today and for the work on the benchmarks. We are adjourned, and I'll see you at the HSAC meeting later this month. Be safe.